Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the CoinGeek Weekly Livestream. I am your host, Kurt Wuckert Jr. We are talking about Bitcoin and Bitcoin-related things. If you have questions, comments, blessings, cursings, grapes, gripes, or grups, please put them in the troll box. We will ask your questions of the guest when we get to the guest. All right, I'll stop. Hey, if everybody wants to subscribe, and hit the alert bell, we will be very happy to have your likes and all the rest, because that's how the algorithms work. And as ChatGPT-4 sort of takes over, we must obey the algorithms, everyone. So welcome to the show. If you're watching live, please push this across the intertubes. So wrap the episode into an ordinal inscription and blast it off to your dear friends, and they can all watch the show too. Sorry about my weird intros. Should I do more or less? More or fewer? Weird intros. Let me know. Taking suggestions from anybody and everybody at all times. So yes, Brandon. So okay, we've got the delightful Brandon Ward is it doesn't even seem like filling in. I think Brandon's done the last 5 or 6 episodes at this point. Alex Moon has unfortunately been MIA. He went and saw his parole officer in Bangkok like 6 weeks ago. We haven't heard from him since. He is allegedly working on the London blockchain conference from prison, jail. I don't know when it's jail. I think it's jail when you're waiting for sentencing, and it's prison after you've been sentenced. But it's a little unclear what level of the Thai legal system Alex Moon is embroiled in at the moment. So sending prayers to Mr. Moon. And we are going to be talking a bit of ordinal inscriptions for the episode. So if you do have questions, please put them in troll box. We're going to be talking broadly about ordinal technology. What is an ordinal? How do we use ordinals? How many blockchains have ordinals on them? And we are going to Alex, they gave you internet access. It's so good to hear your voice, brother. It's been too long. So do people think I'm kidding about the Thai prison thing? Because Thai prison's no joke, everybody. So, okay. Brandon Ward is filling in, so please be kind to him. Send him questions that are worth putting up here. And if there's anything you've wanted to know about really anything, like we will talk about anything on the show, I promise you. But we really want to talk quite a bit about the one-sat ordinal protocol, which for whatever reason seems to have completely united the clans and brought a new era of peace to BSV. And I'm pretty excited about it. So let's cut to a commercial, because I know we've got those ads. Actually, before we cut to the commercial, if you want to advertise on the show, it'd be really cool if you advertised on the show, because advertisers pay the bills here, and that would be a really good thing to pay more of the bills and do all that. And if you happen to be in South Florida, come visit at the South Florida Citadel, which is where I'm broadcasting from. I'm in the Blue Room, which we call blue because it's blue. Everything in here is blue. Everything's blue. My microphone is blue. See, I got the blue mic. My computer stand is blue, and if I was wearing pants, they'd be blue. But I never wear pants when I broadcast. Fun fact, everybody. Please play the ad, Brandon. We'll be back to talk about one.
The best way to predict the future is to create it. And at the London Blockchain Conference, we'll help you create the future. It is the greatest challenge in the blockchain industry right now. Everyone is drowning in information and misinformation while starving for wisdom. Blockchain is the defining technology of our time. At our event, you'll gain a new perspective, but most importantly, understand how you can utilize blockchain technology. Explore and discover real utility and enterprise-grade technology built on blockchain. The London Blockchain Conference accelerates the rate of innovation, creating new opportunities and new revenue streams with novel solutions. You have an opportunity in front of you. Join us in London to learn and create the future.
Hey. Let's bring in, what's up, Satchmo?
Yo, what's going on?
How you doing, brother?
Pretty good.
All right. So You and a few others have been burning the candle at all three ends for the last few days here, working on this one-sat ordinals protocol stuff. Little bit of background. Ordinals is a token protocol created by a dude named Casey Rodamore over on BTC, and it was essentially like, hey, color a sat and put stuff on it. Pretty cool, right? Super novel technology. Actually, it's not super novel. People have been trying to make colored coins on Bitcoin since like 2013, and every attempt has been stifled for one reason or another. Then we got Ethereum and 20,000 altcoins. Then we got NFTs over there, and everybody thinks NFTs are an Ethereum tech. And then BSV had its token explosion, 2 years ago now? We had Run tokens. We've got Staz tokens. We had Sensible tokens. We had Simple Fabric tokens. There's a few others. There's like 5 others that I'm forgetting.
LS.
LS
Digital had one, yeah.
So then all of a sudden BTC inscriptions come out, and they're NFTs just like most others, and everybody's super excited about ordinals. Everybody thinks it's this brilliant thing, and then naturally it bounces to Litecoin, and then I think there's Doge. I've even seen that there are people ticked off that there are Monero ordinal inscriptions because Monero is supposed to be just cash, bro, and then all of a sudden there's BSV ordinals. So can we talk about, first of all, can you give me a high, like what makes ordinals interesting as a protocol? Can you give me a high level on it?
Yeah, sure. So we've had a bunch, as you said, and they're all, have a little bit different flavors to them or whatever. I think what makes ordinals special is probably the simplicity. Where it was born in BTC, there's tons of limitations, and so you don't have a lot to work with, so you kind of have to come up with something very very simple. And I think the where a big part of where the simplicity comes from is that the ordinal that you end up sending around, like whatever you inscribe on, and then you're sending this token around to different people, that token doesn't have to have any special script or identifier, doesn't have to be tagged in some kind of a way. And that's a big departure from a lot of other token protocols. That's where there's a big difference.
Yep.
And because of that, you just rely on an indexer to keep track of the ordinal ID associated with it, and then you just send this around. So that gives it a certain level of like resilience too. You're not worried about the state of some other layer system.
Yep.
In order to be able to send the token safely or to be able to receive it. I mean, even without fully functional indexers that can tell you everything about the token, you could still send them and receive them and view them and work with them a lot because they're just native Bitcoin UTXOs.
Sure. So yeah, run tokens, for example, they use a bunch of stuff in the false op return, basically JavaScript element that's creating or simulating state with a bunch of data up in there. And then that has to be calculated by run logic, and then the token is Bitcoin logic. And we've seen, while super programmable and super fun to program, they don't scale particularly well. I mean, they do better. It's funny because run tokens have been traded and sent at a higher velocity than basically any other token protocol in the history of token protocols. But we found that they break at something like 10 million transactions a day or something. So my question is from a low level standpoint, people like to talk about Staz tokens as being that. Like Staz was supposed to take over the universe also 2-ish years ago, and has failed to bring on a whole bunch of adoption. Even though, when I think about it, there's you got the VionX people, you had the Tal people who were supporting it, Gate to Chain, DXS, which is one of the biggest creators of transactions on the blockchain too. What do you think? Basically, what do you think? Staz compared to ordinals? Can you give a basic breakdown on what the difference would be there?
Well, there's the difference in the stats, right? But then there's other differences that matter too. So one is just kind of network effect, interest, familiarity, all of these kinds of things. Everybody's super interested in ordinals. There's good reason, like I said, there's interesting merits to the protocol itself. Mm-hmm. But then if you pair that with very accessible libraries, easy to understand protocol, good documentation. Now you have something that people can just kind of hop in and build something with. And that's where I think some of the others didn't stack up quite as well. It just wasn't quite as accessible. This is super accessible, very easy to work with, very easy to create the tokens. And soon it'll be very easy to like index them and things. There's still a lot being built very quickly.
Okay. So maybe the difference isn't so much a technical one, but frankly, ease of use and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's part that, it's part the technical side as well. I mean, there's some differences, right? So I mentioned that the single Satoshi, like on BSV, we make them single Satoshis. That's why we call it the one sat ordinal protocol, because we can go down to one Satoshi, whereas on BTC, they have to send a range around because they have a dust limit to worry about.
Which is what, 500 and something sats? 534?
546 or
546.
Like
yeah, it's a weird number. Yeah.
That's what it was on for us for a while, so I assume that's what it is. I'm not sure.
Yep.
But anyway, on with Stas, what they're doing is they have a different locking script. Instead of a regular pay to public key hash locking script, they have a Stas locking script, which is basically enforcing that the output is the same as the input. And that script, adds a bit of weight to this token that needs to be sent around, and then you need to be able to interpret that script. And basically everything that's been built already speaks pay to public key hash. It already knows how to understand a regular pay to public key hash script. Okay, so here's the big difference. That is like the script is what is defining, the boundaries of the token and how to identify the token. In Ordinals, you don't need anything in there. The identifier is inherent because you're using an indexer to track back a number of like that Satoshi that is that UTXO. It just uses native Bitcoin to get the ID. Gotcha. But it adds this really cool thing then. It means that you can use other locking scripts with it. So if you wanted to have that Stas kind of, I want to enforce my output stuff, you could put a locking script like that and enforce your outputs if you really wanted to, I guess.
Okay.
You could still put op return in there. You could still put a different locking script other than pay to public key hash, like an order lock script. So we could have that stuff all working as well. So it's very compatible with a lot of things because of the fact that it's tracked in an unorthodox way that's not going to overlap with what we use.
Interesting.
Regularly.
So what are the primary differences? I mean, I know BTC is using both SegWit witness data and it's using Taproot as a way to sort of get around the transaction size limit and I guess not really their block size limit, but it is pushing the limits of their block size limit by making it that you can essentially make a 4 megabyte token, which is an entire block on BTC. Is there like what are the fundamental differences between the BSV variation and the BTC variation outside of that? So since we do not have SegWit witness data and Taproot as fundamental to the protocol, what's being done in BSV for that stuff?
Yeah, basically, so these are things that they have to use as workarounds in order to store data on the blockchain. They can't just make an output with data in it. So they have to make a commit transaction, and then they sign that commit transaction with a reveal transaction that has the inscription data in the input signatures. And they sign it and put it in there during the signing process to reveal the what the ordinal looks like to the world. We don't need 2 steps, and so because they need 2, they need to actually pay the transaction fee on the network twice as well. And you have the added complexity. You need 2 transactions to succeed versus only needing 1. So for us, we need only 1 transaction. We just put it in the output, but we do put it in an output script, and we follow the same exact script format that they use. Okay. So hypothetically, there's some use cases where you could make like cross-chain swaps or some interesting use case of like the scripts being the same.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So from a practical standpoint, well, it sounds, first of all, just simpler because there's not like a hack required for doing a data thing. And then there's conversation over in BTC land that like, hey, should we fork the chain to get rid of these ordinals people because the chain is growing too quickly and that kind of thing. But, meanwhile, I think Josh Hensley minted 1,000 tokens in a single transaction and that kind of thing. What other powerful things are there given that. So I know we do not have standard transactions. We don't, I don't know if we have a script limit or if the script limit is just higher in BSV, like per transaction or like what other things are there that maybe are not limiting to us that are limited over in BTC world?
The simple fact, like I said, that we could put up return data, we can put other types, like we could put a normal Bitcoin script in front of this inscription. This inscription lives in its own little wrapper, and we have all of Bitcoin script to play with. It's all programming language, basically, right? So we have all smart contracting associated with the ordinals. And then also like metadata tagging with op return, so using like map and stuff. So one of the first ones, as we were testing, the first one that I inscribed was a 3D model of this like crystal thing. And it's inscribed, but it has metadata on it that tags it to a specific geohash. So the idea is if you were building like an augmented reality app, you could view this ordinal sitting there, on Delray Beach.
Cool.
Then the next thing is that we can, and a lot of this is getting fleshed out, but we can support like reinscribing the same ordinal over and over again. So you could potentially do things like, okay, this inscription is like an egg, and then after some time passes, it hatches into some other thing or whatever. There's more options with what we can do with them. And like I said, we can lock them in order lock scripts too, which is a whole marketplace
for sure.
Right there.
So let's talk a little bit about just interoperability and open protocols. Like we had David and Nick on last week talking about IME. Basically, all of a sudden, at launch, and this launch is 36 hours old or something right now. It was fair launch. Like it was really exciting. Gorilla Pool mined the opening bell block to start things out, and like there's all that cool stuff there. But how have we been able to unite the clans so quickly? Because it seems like we've had so many opportunities to do this over the years, and now we've literally got all these people who, in some cases, really don't get along almost ever, who are all like, yep, that's cool, I'm going that direction. Like what?
There's a few different reasons. Yeah, there's a few things. One is the simplicity, that the viability of it as a protocol, that people can see that, hey, this is something that I could seriously consider, versus, hey, there's this deal breaker right there. I don't like this thing about this protocol, Oh, this one's got this licensing requirement, or this one has that, there's always some gripe that somebody's going to have about something. That's one part. The other part is it's not a thing where I'm just seen as like the guy trying to get you to adopt my protocol type of thing, because I didn't create this. It's somebody else created it. I just implemented it in the most simple way that I could on BSV. So there's that part of it. There's the hype around ordinals on other chains, and just in general conversation that that kind of gets everybody to come together around the topic of ordinals. So it's a combination of a bunch of different things. I think the other big factor is we've watched as we've had 15 different token protocols, and none of them really got adoption by different camps. And then we see that something breaks out on another chain, and within like 2 weeks, everybody's on the same page. And that from the standpoint of somebody who's been banging that drum for everybody to get together and like get on the same page with shared, with open protocols or shared protocols, it's like really wanted to see that happen. And there was it seemed like this was a possible avenue that if we implemented this year, that people might feel this way about it. And it's been way more of that than I could have imagined, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's shocking, frankly. Like, just to see how many people, like even the people who are very much like, no, we really like our walled garden. We really like we're trying to tailor an experience for our customers, and we're just not interested in, maybe causing confusion. And like literally all those people have been like, hey, no, this is cool. And so that's pretty cool. And it makes me think about ERC20. So Ethereum, a lot of people may not realize, but you could implement 15 token standards on Ethereum and have them for special use cases. But everybody has coalesced around ERC20 because just because it's literally just a network effect thing. And so if we create network effect with one SAT ordinals, I mean, what could that look like in 6 months from now if every wallet in BSV and like everybody just has their ordinal section of their wallet for whatever is going on? And that can be not just interacting with tokens of maybe a fungible token or an NFT, but it could also be like your login to something in, on some piece of like, MetaNet website or whatever. Like there could be all kinds of things there that are actually occurring. Is this like, everybody immediately thinks JPEGs, but what else might people want to be looking at or maybe thinking ahead on with their wallets?
Yeah, it's definitely authentication. I mean, I see that as the easiest one. I mean, these will be gated access for all sorts of things. You have this certain NFT gives you access to this certain thing. This is, this is the Patreon model. It's the membership card, do a business, the loyalty points. It's all these same concepts. Kind of, you can easily see how they apply directly to this kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. So I'm seeing a couple people, just the conversation. It's funny, the troll box is moving today too. But I see people saying, too bad we weren't primed to do it. It was just nerds of Bitcoin, like that kind of thing. Do you want to talk about the fair launch? Like what was the launch process here and why that matters?
Yeah, I mean, so really this idea for doing something a little bit different around this just came from feedback that was coming from people saying that like, oh, you guys are going to get to like mint all of the early, because inscription numbers with ordinals matter. People want to get low inscription numbers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all together, like, yeah, I like was the one that spearheaded this whole thing, but I think I inscribed like 5 ordinals altogether, something like that. And most of it was just testing. And I did one prior, and I reinscribed it prior, just again for testing purposes. That's literally all I did. There's a couple other people made a couple inscriptions, but it really happened to where there are only a handful that are on chain that happened before the launch date. People really did wait because they didn't want their tokens to be considered by indexers and by other websites to be like not part of the valid set.
Right.
And so there's some interesting game theory of how that could have played out. And I think it was a little bit of a risk doing it the way that we did, because it could have gone different ways.
Yeah.
But we're a small enough ecosystem where I think it worked just fine. And it was fun to watch and to anticipate the countdown and all that. So
what actually happened, and I was involved, this is actually probably my only actual involvement in any of it, was, hey, Kurt, can you mine this Coinbase string? So it was as soon as this phrase is visible on chain in a Coinbase string, that starts a 218 block count. And after the 218th block, that's the official inscription. That anything after then is considered a valid ordinal inscription, but anything before should be considered, counterfeit or pre-mined in some regard. Right, testnet ordies. So
we use live. Yeah, we unlike other chains that actually use their testnet, we just spend the fraction of a penny to test things out.
Just do it anyways. So let's talk a little bit about like map integration. Maybe actually let's just talk about map in general, or some of the other like things like B. Or whatever. Like what are these things for? And can you draw us a pretty picture of maybe what they're used for now, maybe what they should be used for, let's say 5 years from now, and how ordinals, these one-sat ordinals can integrate with that vision?
Yeah, I mean, B is the original inscription protocol. Without the ordinals numbering system, just the inscription part of it, B is the same exact thing. It's just data and a content type written on chain in a very specific way so that you could read it back out. It's exactly the same thing as B protocol. So all that stuff that Unwriter was doing, it's the exact same idea over again, formatted slightly differently. Instead of having the encoding and the content type in 2 separate fields like B does, they have it combined into one. in Ordinals, which is a common thing. Browsers do that, stuff like that. So it's just a very slightly different way to represent the exact same thing. Since we made all of our early op return protocols like composable, right? So we would have P protocol, then we would have map to add some metadata, then we would have like AIP to add signatures. We did that so any one of these protocols could be interchanged without losing the rest of it. Yeah. And we want to make very simple composable protocols. So since B was like the inscription protocol, now Ordinals came out, we could just drop B off, include Ordinals, and now we have the same thing that we've always had, all the other stuff. So now all of the social posts that we're making on Open Social, whatever, every one of those could be an Ordinal.
Sure. So every post is a token.
Yeah, exactly. Not only is the post a token, the post, let's say it could be edited and updated over time. And then the token, if you got the token in your wallet, you would be able to see the post and the whole post history, would kind of follow it, right? Because they were inscriptions all on the same Satoshi through time. So an indexer would be able to put together a whole history there.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Brandon, I see a bunch of questions coming in and getting flagged here. Let's just start asking some of the questions. I have a feeling they're going to lead to follow-up, so we're going to start questions a little earlier in this episode. Do I need to run a full node to validate inscription numbers? There's a good question.
No, there's an option through Jungle Bus. You'd be able to just like hit their API, subscribe to the ORD data type, and you'll get a feed and put the block height in of the first live block. And if you do that, you'll get a feed of all ordinals since the live mark. There aren't any before that. You just put that date in. There wouldn't be any that come back any before that, but you put that data in, you'll get the feed. You could populate an indexer, and now you have an API that you can have an ordinals viewer and count. Yeah. More importantly, count all the numbers you'll get them in order, but you'll be able to number them all and get inscription numbers.
So that's another thing in contrast to the BTC. All the BTC people were like, we've got so many people running full nodes now to manage their ordinals. But Jungle Bus is a better option for the big blockers. For anybody that was worried they were going to have to get a DigitalOcean account or something. Yeah. So Robin K, I'm guessing Koza, why not just spawn an op return on each transfer? Since BSV can't emulate the SegWit signatures, BSV can't do true ordinals. A little spicy.
Yeah. So most of this is just about like our first draft of this protocol was just using op return, and we also had different ways that we were playing with tagging the actual one. The Satoshi that goes around. But at the end of the day, what we wanted to deliver was not our remix of ordinals or our interpretation of ordinals. We want to stay true to it. Of course, we can't put the signature in inputs the same exact way, and we can't do everything. We don't have witness data. We don't have Taproot, these sorts of things. So it's not going to be identical. But we just want to stay true to the spirit of the original protocol.
Cool. If ordinals were so easy to launch, another Kreiderman question, why didn't we have it sooner? This has been, because it's so simple, it is. It really, it almost ticks me off because colored coins were the thing that actually made me think that Bitcoin was a really cool idea in 2013 when I really got into Bitcoin. So I'll re-ask this question. If ordinals were so easy to launch, why didn't we have it sooner? Why mess around with STAs for so long? Is there something revolutionary about the tech that we didn't know before? I'm going to go ahead and say it's not that we didn't know it, but fundamentally everybody was trying to solve maybe too many problems at once with their token protocols. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on, why not 2013 ordinal inscriptions? What the heck?
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, this whole entire time, I didn't really care that much about which one it was going to be. That's why, I was supporting Run for a long time because, my criteria are different. I need to have a certain level of openness. It was the first one with order lock going on, and I thought that was really interesting. So that's why I was building there. But I think the big thing here, the big innovation is the ordinals numbering system. So this had been proposed in other contexts, but I mean, for me personally, it's the first time I'm hearing about it is through the Ordinals project on BTC, and that's probably true for most people. So it is just the idea of tracing back a Satoshi all the way to its Coinbase block, and then giving it a unique number, and then indexing that. That's I think the big thing that wasn't really obvious or wouldn't have been in any of the other token protocols.
Yeah.
How much of an advantage that is, there's trade-offs, there's pros and cons, but there are some interesting advantages for sure.
Yeah. And for anybody that doesn't know, ordinal, the word ordinal, I've had a few people say, God, I just hate that word. And so ordinal is kind of a nerdy way to explain that you're basically just counting. So like when you have a hash, like we get these Bitcoin hashes, and people would typically, like, we've been trying to obfuscate the math out of things for a long time and say, well, hey, maybe it's just like, think of this as whatever. But what the ordinals did is say, hey, isn't it cool that this one's first? Like, you're basically just doing sequential. So first, second, third, fourth. So it's like a numbering concept, basically just embracing the fact that, hey, Bitcoin is a timestamp server and things happen in a sequential order. So let's just count them sequentially, and that will give it its ordinal number. But it's just a fancy way of saying this one is first, this one is second, this one is third, etc. So for anybody that hates the word ordinals, come up with something that explains that principle, and maybe you can market it.
A number defining a thing's position in a series.
Yeah.
That's the definition. It's
there
exactly
you
go. What it is, yeah.
Yep. So Mo Miller, if BTC and other coins or chains are already doing ordinals, then why is it a good thing for BSV to have them?
I'll tell you personally, I was using Run at the moment for things, and there were some limitations there that I had to deal with on a regular basis that are going to be much easier with this protocol. One is like the SDK is written in JavaScript. You have to go through the SDK. So that basically eliminates working with it in other languages unless you have some API hitting like a node endpoint that's working with the Run SDK. So that right there almost is enough to be pretty much is a deal breaker, like long term for me anyway. Yeah. It's not that other ones weren't options. It's just that I wanted to make sure that there was one that was like just truly open. Like, for example, there's no specific licensing requirements for using it or anything like that. So it's kind of another thing. There's just and then also it is about the opportunity to possibly unite a lot of different people and different groups around a certain thing. That would be very valuable too, because that hadn't happened up to this point. Yeah. And it does look like that's happening. So, I mean, in hindsight, yeah, this actually was like a really good idea to do this.
Yeah. So I think furthermore, we've been talking about uniting the clans in that, like, RelayX and, this I'm, and then, so we've got people, guys like David and Jad, and working with RelayX's people, and just kind of everybody just sort of saying like, hey, we all agree this is a really good idea, and maybe we should just sort of coalesce around a really good idea. But I think if you zoom out just a little bit, if you twist the what would you even call it? The spinner on your telescope a little bit, or your microscope a little bit, and say, but there's also these people in BTC and Litecoin and Doge and stuff right now too that are now looking at a really cool token protocol and saying, hey, so I can do something like X, for example, like news inscriptions, for example, is something that exists now on BTC, and people are publishing news on the blockchain over on BTC because that's a super fun, novel idea. And this is the kind of thing we've been doing, again, in BSV for quite a long time. But all of a sudden, our ideas, like the ideas that we have maybe seeded out into the crypto sphere, is starting to hit people that are maybe not political at all, see a really cool idea, and maybe they've got some limitation in any of those other places. So in BTC, LTC, or Doge, and they say, shoot, I really wish I could do X. And then perhaps they come our direction, or because it's all open standard stuff, maybe somebody creates a really kick-ass wallet on BTC, and it's open source, and you can just snag it and drag it over, or vice versa, back and forth. If we could get cross-pollination and eliminate a little bit of the toxicity that just sort of exists because of the politics, I think there's also a lot of opportunity to have us working in really collaborative sense. I mean, we could be talking about dozens of developers that, maybe do some things on BTC and do other things on BSV and look for ways for the chains to kind of work together to make things work. So what do you think? Anything else? Am I missing anything that could also be cool?
Well, there's another, I mean, it's in the vein of what you're saying about cross-pollination, but since we're adopting a protocol with the same structure that they have elsewhere, there are sub-protocols emerging within it. So, for example, they're doing like the dot sats names, and then some other like sub-protocols that are like JSON object-based, that they inscribe that instead of an image. They're putting like some data in there, and then they have a whole separate indexer to index those. And then it becomes like a DNS system, or it becomes like something else. So if there's any interesting outcomes to all of these devs that are working, on other chains on these same ideas, whether it be Dogecoin, Litecoin, wherever, we get to inherit any of that progress, which is cool.
No, it's super cool.
Just instantly could potentially work on BSV, and probably will work better, whatever it is.
Right. More questions, Brandon. I see them still flying through here. I'm going to check the private chat real quick, too. All right. Why just one sat ordinals? Would it be difficult to make variable sat ordinals so that people can choose the number of sats that works best for their use case?
Yeah, so I don't think it will always stay one sat ordinals. I think it's just the name will be, because it kind of highlights that we can do them. And in the beginning, as far as like logic for building indexers and things like that, it gives us a smaller base of transactions. If we only just look at the one sat universe, it cuts down all of that data like significantly. But I think what's going to happen is we'll have more efficient ways to index that won't rely on that. And when we have that all squared away, we can support ranges.
Nice. So that begs another question. If we're talking about just one sat, like that's, like basically fits the definition of a non-fungible token. But what are our options for fungible tokens? Do you see fungible tokens being issued in similar fashion?
That's one of the sub protocols that they're actually messing with on BTC is, BRC20.
BRC20, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I haven't looked at these in depth because I've kind of been heads down on some things lately. But again, if it's viable and it works well and it can be indexed without any big problems, and we could hook it up. I mean, we've been talking about some stuff in the OneSat Discord about exactly this, and I know David's got some big ideas related to this tool too. But I mean, it's going to be really cool. I mean, we're looking at ways to basically do almost like something like a pay mail, but completely on chain with all this as well.
Oh, that'd be cool. Let's all right, let's see. A Heat for Life. If you need one Satoshi per inscription, isn't there a finite amount of inscriptions possible? Good thing for the demand of Satoshis. So, Luke, go ahead and give a brief answer here. I'm going to pull up maybe my favorite tweet that I've ever seen about this. So Nick is one of the main dudes over at Luxor. He's the CEO. Luxor Mining is pretty cool mining pool. They're a BTC pool, but they're really cool people. And he posted as soon as BTC Ordinals came out, he came out and was like, "These are great. This is good for mining. This is good for Bitcoin." And a lot of the small blocker people are like, "Screw you. It's this and that." And he made a tweet on day 1 or 2 and said, what few people understand is there can only be 21 quadrillion ordinal inscriptions, which is like, the kind of thing that people talk when, man, there's only 21 coins, just math, bro, and that kind of thing. And what he's pointing out is when you can inscribe a single sat, which they kind of do in BTC, but it's kludgy. But he's pointing out that, dude, there's quadrillions of sats out there. So if we get to the point where we're running out, well, shoot, we've been very successful. We can pay to engineer some new solution.
Well, also, like I already said, you can reinscribe as many times you want, so it's infinite.
Yeah. So, ta-da! Got more, Brandon? Let me know in the private chat if we're going too fast, going too slow. We got about 20 minutes left. If you're watching, you're very, very curious, you have any Ordinals related questions, please put them in the troll box. Are the tokenized guys getting on board with OneSat, or will they go the way of Betamax? So
I think
it's probably not the nicest way to phrase it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's probably really good purpose to all the structure that they have built around their token protocol for like regulatory compliance and for things that need to be registered in any kind of official capacity or whatever, like licensing and all that. This token protocol doesn't take care about any of that. So if you're worried about legal compliance, things like that, you need to wrap all of that around this token protocol yourself, whereas something like tokenized has a lot of that baked in. So I don't see that disappearing.
Yeah, it's just kind of like I don't know. The question is a little bit like, hey, is the internet going to negatively impact the airline industry? Because they're really kind of doing two different things. Like tokenized, like you said, like they are acting as the issuer on things, and like James over there has just put an incredible amount of work into the due diligence aspect of like launching legal securities and all kinds of things like that. And so if you want to use tokens in a Fortune 100 business or something, probably makes sense to consult with tokenized about issuance and other things there. Whereas Ordinals are super simple, but like you said, there's just no maybe the thing you're issuing will land you in prison. so consult your consult your attorney or tokenized, and you might be in a better spot, frankly. So I guess that's an interesting it's an interesting way to segue and think about what a token actually is or what it's for. I've had a few people say, so Run is dead, and I keep saying, like, no, Run is not dead. Actually, Run tokens are super cool, and they're super useful for a number of things. They just aren't crazy high velocity, but they can still do all kinds of things that are valuable, too. So do you think, what do you think this looks like in 3 years? Do you think we still have, maybe 3 or 4 competing token protocols that are used broadly, or do you think everybody just kind of switches gears? I mean, technically, tokenized could issue tokens in compliance with Ordinals protocol, and that would be no big deal.
Technically, because like we're saying here, the Ordinals protocol itself is actually very simple, and the numbering system overlays on top of anything. So if they have their own token ID system, all of this stuff, they could use the Ordinals protocol just for the data storage portion. If they're storing documents, anything like that. And probably keep the rest of what they have. If they're using UpReturn, you can still use UpReturn with it. If you're using a Bitcoin script, like custom locking scripts, they can, in many cases, proceed it unless they need the thing to be structured in a certain way that doesn't work with it. That's a different story. But yeah, I mean, it's as far as protocols go, it's probably one of the easiest things to hook up to more different, protocols.
So here's something that maybe nobody's thought about. If there are 21 quadrillion ordinals, how big of a number, how many digits are these quadrillions or trillions or whatever? And does that cause us, as you're calculating the UTXO set and you have the ordinal number of all these things, like is an indexer going to struggle with, a number that is X amount digits long? Like when does any of that start being a problem?
You don't index every potential ordinal. You just index from inscriptions. When you have inscriptions made, you figure out what the ordinal numbers are and have that stuff indexed. So it's really only going to be the stuff, that's indexed, and then reinscriptions don't add to that weight. They just, there's new documents that can get created there, but they don't add to the width of the universe of ordinal numbers that are in your database.
Interesting. Any other technical concerns? Is there anything that you've looked at and said, we are going to have to fix this, though?
Reading the blockchain and indexing things and filtering things or whatever is always going to be a big data type of thing. It's the same type of environment that, Google is never going to not have a challenge in front of them with organizing the world's data. And it's going to be the same kind of a challenge for blockchain service providers at the miner level and close to that level. You know, these indexing services and things like that will be professional operations. And so while it might be hard to see how certain things scale or whatever, and it's because you're using a DigitalOcean box for $5 a month or something like that. You know, Twitter and Google and all these guys handle like petabytes of data on a regular basis. Like, we can do this.
Right. Like per second in pieces. So, interesting. So what do you think, Brandon, let me know if, I keep seeing more questions, but maybe it has slowed down. Maybe we have asked all the questions. Luke, we have some kludgy minters. Oh, okay. Will ordinals with sats be redeemable? Will ordinals with sats be redeemable? So like an ordinal that contains
UTXOs.
Stacked sats, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, so right now we're only doing one sat, but if we supported ranges and you could have, a whole bunch of sats on one particular, ordinal or whatever, you're really just counting the first sat in there as the ordinal number and then looking that up.
Sure.
But yeah, they're redeemable. They're just UTXOs. So you just spend them.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. That's the thing. There's no process to like make it not an ordinal anymore. Like everything already can have an ordinal number just inherently, even stuff before ordinals existed on. As
so how many ordinals are in one BSV? It would be,
I don't know,
625 million, right? If it's 100 million sats.
It's how many Satoshis are in it? Yeah.
Yeah. Per coin is 100 million. And so it's so 100 million ordinals per BSV. So you get 625 per block. Ta-da.
Sounds right.
Yeah. So right now there's kind of a mix of interesting tools. So the Ask Happy tool looks pretty cool. And there's the OneSat. Is it OneSat inscriptions.com or OneSatOrdinals.com for minting?
Ordinals, yeah.
Like we need all kinds of like browsers, and I'm sure there's dexes coming, and there's going to be order lock tools that people are using for, doing all kinds of trading. And there's like maybe a dozen people that even kind of know how this stuff works. Are we going to hit a bottleneck on dev resources here pretty quick, or do you think we start attracting people? What do you think this looks like over the next 2 or 3 weeks while there's a frenzy?
Definitely need more people to get in and start building stuff. But I mean, we definitely saw people come in and figure out how to do these inscriptions, even in a very rough early state, just picking up that library and getting it to work.
Yeah.
And I definitely have seen interest from, lots of people in groups and accounts and things that I've never seen before, not familiar with, or things like that. So it's pretty cool to see.
Yep.
People paying attention.
Yeah. Well, and as far as people paying attention, I don't know how many people have noticed if you're not right up in there, but there are 10,000 piece, group drops, like licensed mints, Gorilla Pool's doing the based ordinals as a commemorative thing. But we've seen one that Punks, I think, is doing 10,000 inscriptions. And then, we've seen a few others, but because there's no browsers and there's no decks available, we don't know how many have been done. We might be at the point where there are 500 themed, ready to go drops on chain right now that are going to explode when somebody actually, sees this stuff. How many do we know how many inscriptions there have been? Are you tracking the totals?
It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 35,000, something like that.
There you go. So let's see. Could this fix the back to Genesis problem for fungible tokens?
That's really funny.
Jungle Bus solves all problems for what it's worth.
Right. No, but I think Ordinals basically is an inherent acceptance of the back to Genesis problem of you have to trace the history of the coin to figure out, its standing in the whole scheme of things.
Yeah.
In fact, you have to go back further than genesis of the token. You got to go back through the genesis of the token all the way back to the origin of the, whenever the Satoshi was first given to a miner in a Coinbase transaction.
Yeah. So kind of. Well, and it's funny because it's actually
it embraces it. It doesn't solve it. It embraces
right. Like it's a really elegant, and it's funny because I when Back to Genesis was a big deal like a year ago, I said exactly that. Like somebody's just going to solve this because tokens on a blockchain are too valuable. So somebody's just going to come up with a way to deal with it. Now we came up with Jungle Bus as a way to just attest to validity, but then you're right. It's just like let's make it a benefit. Let's make its
there's some problems that are recognized as problems that maybe the right answer is not to solve it, like transaction malleability, for example.
Right.
Or the double spend probability issue where they wanted to
right.
99.999% is not good enough.
Right. How do we make something perfect? So here's one from Brandon. Is the cost to inscribe or use Ordinals going to be less on BSV than BTC? I think the answer is orders of magnitude. Yeah. Right. Make a commercial for me, Luke. So
yes.
Yeah, hard yes. So Luke, we've got like 6 minutes left, and I want to address. I've seen a few people asking about Exodus Wallet. So Exodus runs a full node, or what they think is a full node, and if Exodus Wallet tells you that the network is experiencing issues, it's their node experiencing issues. Like they're out of sync, and then they're not serving data. But your coins are on the blockchain; they're not in the wallet. So you can export your Exodus keys and put them into Electrum SV. I have done it myself. Your coins are fine. Your private keys are fine. But Exodus, which is a wallet I really, really like, and also, fun fact, a company that I applied to work for in 2018, they can't keep their node in sync, and that's what that's going to look like. But don't fear. There's lots of wallets out there. Got a couple other ones here. Mr. Vidal, can multiple data files and inscriptions be inscribed to one ordinal? How would that work?
Yeah, there's like two ways that you could do this. So one is we have existing data, like we have B protocol, and we have a convention for doing, multiple instances of it in one transaction. You could do it, for example, in multiple outputs. You could put multiple. One example is Josh Hensley did that mint, right? He created multiple ordinals in a single transaction and multiple outputs. That's one way that you can do it. Mm-hmm. If you want to, but on a single ordinal, you can't do it in one transaction multiple times, but you can just do multiple transactions and inscribe on the next transaction, on the next. The original inscription never changes. It is still the original inscription, but now you have this other data. Now you have additional inscriptions, and it's up to the community, the apps, everything to decide what that means when there's additional inscriptions that are detected, because technically you can inscribe as the holder. So it's a weird concept, right? You inscribe something originally, then the person who's holding the other one could technically inscribe data on it when they're holding it the next time.
Sure.
How exactly we apply that to, collections and upgrades of tokens and all this is up for debate.
No, absolutely. Yeah, put up the Brian Stockwell question. I think that's a really good question here. The one above it. There we go. So David tweeted. I can't remember what he. Maybe it was an unsolicited tweet, but he said, to help those out who don't understand Bitcoin ordinals, imagine literally owning your website, social media pages. You make updates by spending the asset and updating with new content. Like, this is the kind of thing. I mean, you and I, Luke, like we've been talking about this for a good while. You've been talking about it probably longer than I have, at least publicly. And so, can we, what are we built? By we I mean the Bitcoin world. What are we building here?
Not the royal we. So what he said is a really easy way to think about it. And there's another example that we were talking earlier that is a great one too. There's like Telegram channels where you basically subscribe to it, but the owner is the only one that can write to the channel. So now imagine that you have this single SAT, you spend it back to your own self, and you do another inscription. Well, that inscription can be a post, a message. And now people could basically subscribe to that ordinal. They don't own it, but you could subscribe to it and watch the blockchain for updates on it. And now you have basically a post. Now you could do that if it wasn't a post, if it was a website. You literally store your website data inside this inscription in a packet. Maybe it's a zipped up file, right? And then you store it in there. An indexer reads that transaction, decompresses it, and you can actually visit the website by putting in the ordinal number. It will go to the ordinal, look at the latest version of the inscription, right? Because it could be inscribed many times. The latest version is the latest version of the website. But it has a built-in Wayback Machine. So you could go all the way back to the very first version of the website.
Sure. No, that's super cool. So essentially you're using the ordinal as an IP address, but you can also have some other aspect of it be the DNS resolution and all kinds of other things. We can literally rebuild the entire internet, but not from scratch, because we can integrate with it slowly too, which I think is a pretty crucial step, is that it doesn't have to be like, okay, there's a cutoff day where the internet dies and everybody needs to have their wallets ready. Big step.
Well, let me just illustrate one thing that's kind of crazy here. When we first started thinking about how to bring this protocol over, there was one interesting thought that really illustrates what is interesting about ordinals as like a numbering system. Mm-hmm. We kind of had this realization of like, well, look, if everything already has ordinal numbers, you could associate an ordinal number with any UTXO. Couldn't we go back in time and say all the people who have these B transactions that they made, they put images on chain from all this time? Can't we just call those ordinals and say they are? And technically we calculate the ordinal numbers for all these other transactions. But here's the issue. Most of those we did in 0 Satoshi outputs. There are no Satoshis associated with any of those things. If there was simply, we had done them with 1 Satoshi outputs, just coincidentally, and they were still owned by people with keys, then we could have resurrected these old outputs, and they would have been Satoshis or ordinals in people's wallets with no need to mint. Yeah. But anyway, just wanted to put that out there. It's just a thought experiment. It's just kind of, it's not that the ordinals, the inscription protocol is novel or whatever. We already had B protocol to store data. That's not the interesting thing. It's just saying, here's a way to address and to tag everything with a unique identifier, whether or not it has some special script or some tag in the transaction itself.
Mm-hmm. Fulcrum Source, who's a Miami BSV fellow. If you can continue to inscribe a token indefinitely, does that increase the size of the UTXO containing the inscribed token? No?
No.
Freenauts asking, when audio one-sat ordinals on Jamify?
Oh, you know it. Yeah, that's coming. I mean, I was already working on a minter for Jamify a little while ago before this whole thing happened, and I got it about 90-something% done. But I never actually hooked it up to mint the token, the last step. I got the whole form all working, and the audio upload, been Cloudinary integration and all this good stuff. It took a while to get it all nice. But now I just have to hook it up to this. And to be honest with you, I'm very happy that I have to hook it up to this and not to run, because it's going to be a lot easier for me.
Nice. Incredible. Well, we're basically done, man. It's the top of the hour. We did it. Any closing thoughts?
Cool. No, man, I just hope this ignites a little bit of fire for people. I think the tools and the docs are finally going to get to a place where this stuff is way more approachable, and you can get people to, hey, come check out building on BSV. And it's not like, why is this so, we have the best network, but it's always been so hard because we don't always have the best tools. But I think we're getting to a place where that's starting to swing the other way.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks, man. See you soon.
All right, man. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. So that was Luke Rohenaz, a member of the South Florida Bitcoin Citadel, and you could be too if you want to join us on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then please like, subscribe, hit the alert bell, and let the world know that you are watching the CoinGeek Weekly Livestream. If you're still watching live, thank you so much. Please share across Facebook, Twitter, and everywhere else where people consume content. I would really appreciate it if you let people know that this is the definitive episode about one-stat ordinals on BSV. And, of course, let them know that anytime you meet anybody and talk about Bitcoin, tell them Kurt sent you. That'd be a good one. So, everybody, I will see you next week. I will see you soon if you're a local. And please follow, actually, I don't know if I should advertise necessarily, but the South Florida Citadel has a YouTube channel where we're doing more like in-person content and basically just streaming like the stuff that we're up to here in this space. So that includes like Bitcoin 101 content or basically anything if it's educational or workshop related. So if you want to like, subscribe, and hit the alert bell over there too, there's lots of content coming out of there with much gratitude to Bitcoin Association for helping us out and get a bunch of this stuff kicked off. So thanks to BA, you guys are killing it and helping us succeed. So thanks to them. Thanks to everybody else. Thanks to the CoinGeek people. Thanks to my friends, family, and some of my foes. And, per usual, the sign off. I'm Kurt Wuckert Jr. reminding you to please be good to each other, and goodbye.
The best way to predict the future is to create it. And at the London Blockchain Conference, we'll help you create the future. It is the greatest challenge in the blockchain industry right now. Everyone is drowning in information and misinformation while starving for wisdom. Blockchain is the defining technology of our time. At our event, you'll gain a new perspective, but most importantly, understand how you can utilize blockchain technology. Explore and discover real utility and enterprise-grade technology built on blockchain. The London Blockchain Conference accelerates the rate of innovation, creating new opportunities and new revenue streams with novel solutions. You have an opportunity in front of you. Join us in London to learn and create the future.